Hi guys, how you going?
How you guys doing today?
Let's jump into some horror bites. We're gonna make this quick one for me. I just read that if you guys are familiar with Funko Pop, they like basically took over the market in horror. I don't want to say memorabilia, but like I don't know what the action figures really. And they've have well, just not even horror, just action figures in general. They have their own little brand of big-eyed toys. And they just announced that Stephen King is getting his own Funko Pop figure.
Oh, really?
Which I think is really cool. I don't really like the toys in general. I think they're too cutesy for.
Personally, I agree.
I
For
think
those who appreciate them, it's a good thing,
and I think it's cool that they're immortalizing Stephen King that way. Not one of his characters. I mean, his characters have been a ton of them already, but just the man himself is cool. It's just another way to celebrate Stephen King and his genius.
Yeah.
The other one I want to talk about is not is walking the line of horror, but kids my age, Tyler's age, I think too. We have a little bit of age difference, not like 4 years. So Disney Plus just came out, and one of the many selections on Disney Plus is Gargoyles.
Yes.
And a lot of kids grew up with Gargoyles and loved that show. And even before it hit Disney Plus, there'd been talks about like, can we bring it back?
Yep.
And now it sounds like, I don't know if they looked at the analytics of everyone watching it the first day or whatever, but it sounds like they're inching closer to bringing Gargoyles back. I don't know if it would be aimed at kids again or aimed at the original fans, but
Either way, I'd be interested.
so Gargoyles not exactly horror, but I mean, kind of.
It's got the gothic motifs there.
for the kids. So that's what I want to throw in there today.
All right. And for me, this is not exactly super unheard of. Many of you are probably already familiar, but The Witcher has already been confirmed for second season on Netflix.
Already?
Yes, the first season hasn't even been released yet. We got about a month still. It comes out December 20th. So from today, got about a month. So for those,
Netflix is really cocky.
they are putting big money behind this. They are very, very confident in that the show's going to do well. For those who are unfamiliar with the Witcher series or the original books or from the games, the massively popular games that came out, set in that world and the characters and everything about them. So the story essentially follows they're called the Witcher, and essentially they're mutant monster hunters. The lead character is a Witcher named Geralt, who
played by Henry Cavill in the show.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
That's Superman.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar. Essentially, it follows this hunter who, as he goes around slaying monsters for money, essentially. I've watched the trailers for the series, but as far as my understanding is, and I could be incorrect on this, but I'm pretty sure that this acts as a prequel to the first book because some of the characters that are appearing in the first season are a lot younger than their first appearances, I believe. Definitely in the games, but younger than I believe in their first appearances in the books too. But yeah, so this, I will kind of classify this as more like a fantasy series, but there's definitely some horror elements to it. Some of the creatures and stuff that he fights are definitely straight out of horror novels. There's a lot of like witchcraft, both, kind of on the good side and on the bad side. And the creatures themselves are definitely monstrous. So this will be interesting to see. They're clearly very confident since they already announced the second series. So
I'm guessing since you brought it up, you're interested in it.
Yes, I am definitely interested in seeing where we're going to go with this.
I don't know anything about it, so I was leaning more toward not jumping on the bandwagon right away because I have so much other stuff to watch.
Kind of waiting to see.
I mean, maybe if you're endorsing it. Maybe.
I'll have to get back to you. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we'll just leave it at that. All right. And so with that, I think we'll jump right into our subject for the day.
We are going to talk about Rob Zombie, the good, the bad, and the ugly of library.
It's catalog, yeah.
I guess just to jump right into it, to be honest, when I first heard that he was making House of a Thousand Corpses, I was like, the guy from like the singer, Rob Zombie, is making a movie. And so I was like, okay, I'll watch it, but he's a singer, he's not a director, he's a writer. I loved House of a Thousand Corpses. It was very much like a mixture of Last House on the Left and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was super gory.
I would also compare it a little bit to like The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I thought it was brilliant.
Mhm.
And so when he had the chance to reboot Halloween, I was like,
Holy crap!
yes, let's do this.
Mhm.
And his original take on Halloween, I actually really liked it. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people,
Kind of jarred by it, but
yeah. But I like how he made Michael Myers more of a human being, a serial killer, like a psychopath.
Mhm.
He wasn't a supernatural being. He showed like him as a kid and how
Yeah.
he was kind of a psychopath.
Yep.
And I think my love for Rob Zombie pretty much ends there.
I mean, Devil's Rejects is pretty good.
Yeah, that's fair, but it's. I mean,
There is one scene of contention, obviously, that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, which is that was no pun intended, which is that sexual assault scene. Kind of, I'm not a big fan of those. I feel like they're unnecessary. I feel like implied does the job. You don't need to show it; just imply it. But other than that, like Devil's Rejects was a pretty solid film. But it was, I would agree that was definitely a step down from this previous work.
And then he went on and did Halloween 2, which was just a clusterfuck. Like, I don't know what was going through his mind. So the movie the movie has a lot of references to white horses, and I think he was riding his own white horse when he wrote that movie. I mean, I don't know, like the whole thing just, was confused. I'm still confused. I watched it 4 times. I don't understand what's going on in that movie. Is Michael real? Is he a figment of Laurie's imagination? What is going on? Like, the whole movie is just terrible.
Like he tried to get a little too art house with it or something.
And I think that's when my obsession with Rob Zombie really broke up, is after I watched that movie. I was like, maybe this guy isn't the genius that I thought he was.
Yeah.
And it really, he hasn't impressed me so far. I'm full disclosure, I haven't seen 3 from Hell yet.
That just came out this past year, right?
Yeah. It's really recently. So maybe I'll watch it and I'll apologize in a future episode if I watch it and I'm like, oh no, he's brilliant. But I don't know.
There's definitely a period there where towards a more recent half, like it seems like his form just kind of fell off.
So I think a really good example is 31. The movie, was maybe kind of an okay idea, but it really seemed like he made a movie just because all of his friends were sitting around not doing anything, and he wanted to give him work. So he quickly wrote a script. Like, his wife must have been bored, and like, again, a lot of his movies seem like he just wrote a movie to put his wife in it.
Yeah.
And 31 was a perfect example of, like, it just seemed like he wrote this movie to put all of his older friends in a movie.
His wife's been the lead in how many of them? House of Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, 31, Lords of Salem.
She
3
plays
from
Michael's
Hell.
mom in Halloween.
Yeah, she's
she's in every single one of them, and it just really, but 31 especially, there's a couple actors in there that are just like Rob Zombie favorites. And I don't know if you've seen the movie. I only watched it once, but from my recollection, these people on a tour bus and they come across like some kind of carnival, basically.
Yeah, with clowns.
Yeah, and they go through like all these different rooms, and there's all murderous clowns in every single one of them, and it was a bad movie. It was real bad. Like, I remember a lot of my movies. I don't remember that movie because I didn't want to. Yeah, Rob Zombie, though, like,
I mean, I guess there's still hope that he could come back and like come up with something new. Maybe, again, we have not seen 3 from Hell. If it's following the trend of his most recent releases, it's not looking good.
but he started so promising. And I mean, I don't know if you're a fan of his music at all.
Oh yeah.
I didn't listen to any White Zombie, but when he did his solo stuff, there's a good time in my life where I was all about Dragula and Living Dead Girl. So, and I don't think he's made any music in a long time too. So maybe that's what he needs to do, is go back and write an album, and then
get some ideas from that.
yeah, and then come back and give us something that's like an interesting original idea instead of just another piece for Sherry Moon Zombie to be in.
Part of me wonders if he just like, I guess if I had to describe his best work with a single word, I would describe, if I had to, let me rephrase this. If I had to use one word that I think would mark the difference between his early movies and his more recent ones would be the word restraint. He had a lot more restraint in his first releases, where he wasn't trying it. It didn't feel like he was trying to do too much. I felt like he had a very clear cut idea of what he wanted to do, and what he wanted his film to look like, and then he did that. And then for these more recent ones, it almost seems like he's trying to do too much with it, where he's trying to one up himself, and it just like keeps taking the narrative and like the scenes in his films getting too far out there with them. Like he's not practicing restraint, it feels like. And while that may be more fun from like a directorial perspective, like a filmmaking perspective, like the end result is that you end up with these very mediocre films that don't really have a whole lot of consistency to them. So I think the lack of restraint that he's showed in his more recent films is kind of like plays a big part of his downfall.
Yeah, it's not to say that he's not brilliant, because he has shown sparks of brilliance, and maybe he does too much. Maybe it's like he has his fingers in everything, the writing, the directing, and again, he's just trying to push the stuff out way too fast, and it's not solid.
Yeah.
I will say, if you haven't, I actually can't find it. Like, it's not on Amazon or anything, but I have a physical copy of the soundtrack to Halloween, his version of Halloween. That soundtrack has some bops on it. That I mean, he went with like a lot of really old like 70s music, but the music, and if you go back and watch the movie, the music is so contradictory to what's going on in the film, and I think that adds an element to it. Like it was, those early films, he had so much genius to him, and again, it really feels like it got too easy for him.
Yeah,
maybe that's it.
Another thing too is like maybe he's. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't looked into like the whole process that he used for the making of his films, but part of me wonders if he just hasn't been delegating as much, or maybe he doesn't have like a writer's room. Maybe that would help, like having other writers come in and kind of like bounce ideas off each other when they're coming up with these ideas for the films and the scripts and stuff like that.
I know he was supposed to do Halloween 3. They were in talks, and after that second movie came out, they were like,
yeah, now we're good.
Yeah, we're going to distance ourselves from this because it was so bad.
It kind of ran into that same issue that you always saw with like the long running 80s horror franchises, where they just like hit a point where they almost become parodies of themselves and unintentionally. But but it happened immediately within one film.
Well, it's another great point too, is I think it's cool that Rob Zombie has this like stable of characters, there's stable of actors that he works with.
A lot of like writers and directors and stuff too, like Christopher Nolan,
Joss Whedon,
Christopher Nolan. But yeah, so like,
but I don't know. Like, I think that's part of the problem with Rob Zombie too, is he's putting these people maybe in roles that
they might not be suited for necessarily.
Yeah, just because that's his guy. I think we're kind of in consensus here that like Rob Zombie needs to either hang it up or take a break and bring it back and give us something.
Give us a fresh idea, something that,
Because when you look at his body of work, it really starts high and seems to just,
flounder towards the end.
Yeah, just it goes downhill slowly and then picks up some steam.
Some of the reviews that I've seen too, like again, coming back to 3 from Hell, I haven't seen it again, but some of the reviews that we've seen for it too have not been glowing either. So,
well, and here's the thing about 3 from Hell 2 is it had to be rewritten, because Sid Haig was supposed to be a much bigger part of that movie, and then he got sick and eventually passed away, and so they cut out huge chunks of the movie that he was supposed to be in. So maybe that's not even a movie that we can really judge him on.
Yeah, true.
But I would watch another Rob Zombie movie, but I don't want to see one soon. 3 from Hell just came out. I want to see something that is a return to form for him.
Yeah, agreed. I think we can also probably bring up Eli Roth in a similar fashion. He has like some excellent films under his name, like the original Cabin Fever, Hostel Part 2, if you're a fan of those. So, and he's kind of known again like around the community as being like this really like horror icon.
Yeah, and I mean, he does more than Rob Zombie, like, because, he acts, he writes, he produces, he does all that stuff. But when you're looking at just from like a pure writing and directing sense, I think you're right. He did start really strong, and then maybe he did put his,
Yeah.
hands in too many things, and it kind of made the thing that we like him most for suffer.
Yeah. You're mentioning before we were recording that one of his more recent ones was, I think, Green
Inferno.
It was like a gore fest, but had no.
It was, I mean, listen, I'm okay with gore. Obviously we do this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I love horror, but at some point, like, it's just, I don't want to watch somebody get their fingers cut off and chewed on or whatever. It's too much. And when you linger on the scene and you just make it as uncomfortable and gruesome as possible, nobody's getting anything from that.
Yeah. He was also executive producer, and I think was a lead creator or something on a couple other ones. The Hemlock Grove series, which I watched in its entirety. There was moments there, like a good portion of the show was really entertaining, really good watch, pretty entertaining story. But then there's also some moments in the series that just really, really suck, frankly. And that's not like the only example too. Like, we have the Cabin Fever remake.
Yeah, the Cabin Fever remake. It was literally a shot for shot remake of the original film. They just took out all the good dialogue from the original that made the movie good. I mean, there's so many in that original movie. There's so many just great one-liners that were like, tell me, why would you use Sneela stickers for the nougat? Like, just everything about that. And they just took out all those funny parts.
Mm-hmm.
I was so pissed when I watched that movie, to be honest. I don't know why he produced it.
Yeah.
I just, like, why would you take something that's like having a baby and then, like, selling it to somebody who's going to kick it? I don't get it. Like, and I don't know why he let that final product out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe he just wanted to make some money off of it and move on, but
yeah, I mean, we're familiar. We know that he really loves his gore. Like, that's ready and apparent in pretty much everything he does. I think he did one of the shorts in the Grindhouse series, Cheerleader one, I believe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so like we're aware that he has his gore, and we're aware that obviously that there are people who do enjoy that type of film. They really enjoy, like, the gore fest. But as a critic, you need more than that. You need to have some sort of plot, some sort of like
there
variability.
has to be substance.
And like when you, like we mentioned before, there's a restraint. Restraint is a big thing. And when you just end up watching, an hour and a half of gore when there's only like maybe 20 minutes without any sort of violence, it kind of you become a little bit desensitized to it on one hand, and on the other, it just stops. Like you're like, as you mentioned before, like you just kind of linger on this scene that goes on for way longer than necessary, and it's almost like a scene of dialogue in a scene that goes on too long, whereas just like more is being said than needs to be said. And you could say the same thing about the gore aspect.
I think the perfect marriage of, like, a perfect example of how you can use gore but not go over the top, and like just have a good combination of both, is Green Room. And so one of my favorite actors of all time was Anton Yelchin. He passed away in 2015, and it just like still breaks my heart.
This is that the white supremacist one, correct?
Yeah.
With
Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart played the head.
It's a great. There's so much substance in this movie. There's so many subplots. It's super gory.
That was an excellent film, actually.
It's so gory, but at the same time, it's worth sitting through because the story is so good.
And again, that's The Green Room, not to be confused with Eli Roth, The Green Inferno. Two different movies.
I guess basically what this episode's about is as fans, wanting more out of our directors.
Like it's sad to see a decline in the quality of their films when we had such high hopes for them.
And we know that not everything's going to be just gold standard, but
yeah, we're not expecting batting like 10 out of 10.
Not every single Stephen King novel is classic, but they're all pretty good.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what we want, is we want pretty good. We don't want like, what the hell's up with the white horse, Rob Zombie?
You went from Halloween 1 to white horses, man.
Yeah.
Where did we go wrong?
maybe lay off the white horse a little bit when you're filming.
But do you have any other last thoughts on that subject? Any other directors we can possibly think of at the moment who kind of floundered?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a few out there that need to listen to this.
I guess with that, actually, I do have 3 questions for you this time.
All right, let's do it.
All right, let's go ahead and jump right into this. So, question number 1: how do you feel about sci-fi horror?
It's not my favorite genre, but when it's done right, I do enjoy it. I don't jump right into, I mean, I guess it's maybe a broad sci-fi horror is kind of a broad, but like, my big horror, like my go-tos are slasher movies and creature features. But sci-fi horror, I think, is not only a fun genre, but it does appeal to a lot of people, and it's a great bridge between sci-fi people, like your Star Trek, and the horror genre.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're talking about movies like Alien.
Yes.
Maybe even into more like cosmic.
Yeah.
Horror.
Yeah.
I do
not
think,
to be confused with supernatural horror, which.
Yeah, more like The Void. So I like it, and I don't even think it's something that I have to be in the mood for.
Yeah.
Like if it's on, I'll watch it, but it's not something that I search out.
When you do watch like a sci-fi horror film, do you prefer it to be set in outer space or on Earth, like far future, more closer to like near future?
I think outer space. I think like Earth is just too terrestrial. Like we know,
Kind of like more Event Horizon.
Yeah, you can do more in space because I don't know about you, but I don't know anything about space other than what I've seen when I look up.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, where you at?
You can do a lot more, and it's more believable. I'm sure there are a lot of astrophysicists that are like, you wouldn't float, or whatever, or like the whole what's the tagline from Alien? In space, no one can hear you scream.
Yeah.
So, I think in space, it definitely has to be in space. As far as the timeline goes, I think, again, maybe not far future, but definitely 50, 100 years out future. A great example of a movie that I like, a horror movie that was in space, is a John Carpenter movie. A lot of people might not have even watched it. Ghosts of Mars.
Yes.
I love Ghosts of Mars. It's a movie. It takes place on Mars, obviously, about people colonize Mars, and then some kind of space spirits start.
Yep, space ghosts. Literally space ghosts.
But I think that's a really, that's right up my alley. There's a little bit of action. It's horror, and it's inventive, but not unbelievable.
It's definitely a sort of film that I could have seen coming out in the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, it was a John Carpenter movie. So
yeah.
But it's his
kind of his niche. Yeah. Before I ask my third question, kind of spinning out from that, how did you feel about Signs then? M. Night Shyamalan Signs. Would you consider that horror?
Yeah. I mean, it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie. I don't know where else you'd put it. I think it was one of his weaker movies.
Okay.
At the time, to be honest with you, at the time when I think I was 16, 17, I liked it when I first watched it, but I don't think it holds up very well at all. And when you go back and watch it, there's a lot of plot holes in it. Mel Gibson's in it, which is not good.
M. Night Shyamalan, perfect example of what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
directors who decline.
Yeah,
really hard.
He's so, I don't know if you've seen The Visit. That was one of his newer ones. I love that movie.
Really? Okay.
And I didn't actually know he did it until I started watching it, and I was like, this movie feels really M. Night Shyamalan-y. But it was funny, and
he does have a couple good more recent ones, like Split was pretty good.
Yeah. Split was good.
Glass, awful.
Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Why,
that
dude?
Took a weird turn. Yeah. All right. And last question. So my last question: what is your personal favorite sci-fi horror movie?
So that's a tough one since it's not my go-to genre, and I know that a lot of people are probably screaming at their whatever they're listening to, saying Alien, The Thing,
Predator.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of good ones out there, a lot of classics, but at the end of the day, I think in this genre, I'd have to go with The Faculty. It's so 90s, but it kind of holds up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's if you haven't seen The Faculty, it's got a lot of like big 90s, like Elijah Wood's in it.
Mm-hmm.
Usher is in it. But these aliens, I don't know if we even really ever learn where they came from. They just kind of show up one day and they crawl into people's ears, and it's really like an Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yep. Kind of style
Parody,
story.
yeah. And they take over the faculty, the aptly named faculty of the school, and they start trying to take over the kids. And there's a little like, the kids are saying, "Hey, our teachers are crazy. They're trying to kill us." And the parents are like, "You're just kids. Go to school." And Josh Hartnett's in it.
Yep.
Josh
There you
Hartnett, classic '90s guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays this guy who's
Minnesota resident.
too cool for school. Yep.
Anyway.
He's too cool for school. He's like this genius, but he's an underachiever and stuff like that. And he has this drug that he made that kills the aliens. And I guess if I was gonna like flip through my catalog to find if I was really in the mood for like an alien sci-fi horror movie, that would probably be the one I'd choose.
It's pretty fun. It's a pretty fun movie, actually. I really did enjoy that one myself.
But not to say, I mean, there are a lot of good ones like Space Odyssey, but if I'm going to sit down and watch a movie that I want to enjoy, those just aren't my. I'd have to go with Faculty, something a little bit on the funnier side, a little bit more fast paced.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and now it's time for our movie suggestions of the week. With it almost being Christmas time, I want to get one more Christmas movie in here. If this one, I think a lot of people may have heard of, maybe not have seen, early 80s movie, Silent Night, Deadly Night. And it's really fun. It's cheesy 80s slasher movie. This kid is, he watches a Santa, deranged Santa murder his family, and he gets put in a foster home or not a foster home, an orphanage. And it's basically like he has a lot of childhood trauma throughout his life,
as one would.
I mean, there's like multiple in the first couple scenes of the movie, the first act of the movie. He goes through a lot of childhood trauma from before his parents are killed to watching his parents be killed to all the trauma he experiences of orphanage, and then he turns 18 and he just gets booted out, and he goes to work for this toy store, and they make him a Santa, and he has all these issues with Santa, and so he becomes a strange Santa and starts killing people. And he has multiple catchphrases. One is naughty, naughty or nice or whatever. But the other one, which he just utters at the most perfect times, is punish. So he'll like hit someone with an axe and be like, punish. It's I'm gonna let Tyler borrow this movie tonight so he can enjoy it. But yeah, if you're like looking for a Christmas themed horror movie to watch, it really is a classic Christmas horror movie. And they made this is like almost like a topic for a whole nother episode, but they had the Hellraiser effect to the series. They made the first one. The second one is about the main character. The first one, his brother becomes a killer.
Okay.
And they follow him. In the third one, his brother's in a coma, and then he gets paired up psychically with this blind psychic girl, and she sees like I think he's like forcing her to commit murders, or
okay.
The fourth one is about a coven of witches, and the fifth one is about a toy maker.
Okay.
So it just goes way off the rails where they had nothing to do with the original movie, but it's like Halloween 3, where they just slap the name on the movie. That's like a whole other topic for another time.
Yeah, we can get into departures and franchises.
But Silent Night, Deadly Night, go out and watch it. I don't know where you can find it. I think it's actually kind of hard. I actually found it, the Blu-ray, in like a $5 bin at Big Lots, so maybe you have to go to Big Lots. I don't know. But anyway, I rambled on long enough.
So the movie that I'm going to recommend today is actually going to be Velvet Buzzsaw, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, which is about an elderly gentleman artist who passes away, and he kept all of his art private. Unfortunately, a associate with an art institute or art museum, whatever you want to call it, essentially stumbles across his work after he passes away, and starts really